Hello, everyone, and welcome to Homegrown, the Soccer Yanks home for domestic soccer in America. It's a new venture, executive produced by Rescinded Red. He's a regular contributor to the Soccer Yanks. Jay?
How you doing, world?
This is Jay's baby. I'm hosting a little bit, but everything is the workings of Jay and his domestic soccer mind. Tonight we have a special guest with us, Chris Gluck from PossessionWithPurpose.com. You may have also seen his work at SoccerYanks.com. He spearheaded our weekly power rankings, and he's also provided us a little insight on Real Salt Lake a few times. Chris, how's it going over in Portland today?
Oh, living the dream. We got lovely weather out here, and the All-Star festivities are beginning to build up.
You know, perfect segue, because let's talk a little bit about the All Star Game, and I think what people want to know, there's been a couple of names that have been on the list that some people are not so happy with, and a couple of names that are off the list that people wanted to see. Jay, who do you think should have been at this All Star Game that is not?
I think because of the World Cup, we had a lot of guys who spent little time in the league, did little things in the beginning of the season that didn't really warrant an all-star consideration, who kind of got themselves in. And someone like Omar Gonzalez, who was injured most of the season, like Boswell, should have got a call in, definitely, I thought, on my end. And then I think someone like Tim Cahill, who got a lot of press from the World Cup. He's a guy who should not have been taken. My personal favorite this season has been Pedro Morales from Vancouver. I think it's the biggest snub, even beyond someone like Don Dwyer.
But Tim Cahill had the best goal at the World Cup.
But the World Cup is not the MLS season.
Chris, what's your take? You kind of agree with Jay here, or you got something different?
I kind of try to stay away from individual player analysis and focus on the team. But so in looking at the team, you know, here's what I see. I see you got Beasler, Gonzalez, I think Marshall's on there, Parkhurst, Yedlin, and help me out here, maybe one other defender.
Colin from KC.
Yep.
You know, they're missing fullbacks.
Yeah, there's no left fullback.
Yeah, and so how can you play a game with one fullback and five center backs? And you know, Caleb is probably going to run a basic 4-2-3-1. I mean, he's already kind of hinted that his second half pairing in the central defensive midfield area is going to be Alonso with Will Johnson. So he's going to run four at the back, and you know, I don't see it. You know, there's a couple of good fullbacks out there. Probably Franklin comes to mind. Earlier in the season, I would have thought maybe one of the fullbacks from New England. But you know, for me, the fullback position in MLS as a whole kind of lacks a little bit. So really, I guess it's probably not surprising that you see five center backs here. He'll probably put Parkhurst on one side and Yedlin on the other.
I kind of have to agree. I think on the right side, there's a decent amount of right side of fullbacks. You have Beltran. You have Sean Franklin, who plays on the right side. I mean, Agent De La Garza has probably been the most consistent on the left I could think of, other than Roy Miller, who's, you know, who probably wouldn't get voted in, or at least wouldn't get picked. You know what, though? I kind of think if you listen to a couple of soccer shows and a couple of people whining during the World Cup season, I think you give Landon Donovan that shot at the left back that everybody wanted to see. I heard a lot of he can just play left back. We need him anyway. Yeah. So
it's all about putting the best 11 on the field, right?
That's what everyone says.
Yeah, right.
It's a Klinsmann strategy.
Boy, that is just so offensive.
Listen, I have a counter position to both of you. Maybe they just are presuming that they're going to need to play a lot of defense against Bayern. And they're like, let's just put center backs back there and just park the bus. I'm obviously joking. I agree, but I agree actually when you were listing off the center backs and you said, you know, they don't have a left back. I'm like, yeah, but there's full backs in general in the league are just, you know, the good ones are even not that good.
As a whole, I think the league lacks in fullbacks. And, you know, I was talking with the guy that runs stats for Arsenal FC about 2 or 3 months ago, and we were talking about how fullbacks are kind of underrated as a whole. Fullbacks end up having more touches, excluding throw-ins, end up having more touches than most central midfielders, and certainly more touches than forwards or center backs. And for a position that sees a lot of the ball, it's surprising that there's not more fullbacks. And then when you look at the end of the season, top 11 players for MLS, they pick 3 defenders, they pick 4 midfielders and 3 strikers. And how many teams in MLS run a 3-4-3?
Nobody.
Come on.
Nobody. It's so hard for people to conceptualize what you're talking about, how so much football is started from the back and it goes out wide to the fullbacks, and they're getting the ball. But what do people love and remember? It's the guys that have the one pretty dink, or that slot the beautiful through ball, and the guy that puts the ball in the back of the net. So we're always facing this issue of what really is important versus what excites us.
Yeah, absolutely. I challenge MLS as a whole. I mean, they manage MLSsoccer.com. And week in and week out, the players that get the most visibility across the organization, treating it as, are the forwards and some of the attacking midfielders. United is going to get better with the men's national team and really adopt the philosophy that Jurgen Klinsmann's got. I think it's worthwhile that people begin to understand that there's more than just goal scoring that goes on in a game of soccer. And even statistically, goals not scored are worth 2.5 points on average per game as opposed to goals scored, which are only worth about 1 point a game. So there's a flip side that I think is missing on this All-Star team, and it's recognizing that the defenders are pretty critical. That's my soapbox, and I'm sticking to it.
I'm going to throw a name out there, though, real quick, and then we're going to move on. Lee Nguyen from New England. Thoughts? I mean, because he's kind of a fan favorite, especially when the voting was going on. New England was not where they are today.
I think last week I was looking up the stats for him. 6 goals, 1 assist. He was the engine for that team when they were at their best. It just, except for me, I like the Vancouver team. They think they're young. They just need to put it together. But the Pedro Morales was a snub for me. But I think Lee Nguyen definitely deserves a lot of respect. He's been one of those guys in this league who doesn't get the credit he deserves.
He's been grinding.
Yeah. All
right, moving on. Chris, you are based out of Portland. You cover the Timbers, I believe, as well on a regular basis.
I do.
I think so, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually on the Columbian.com, Portland Timbers. It's a newspaper.
All-Star Game. Now, we'll get into the importance of the All-Star Game to Portland and the team and the city, but this year they have the Homegrown game, and I'm starting to feel personally that the Homegrown game is going to be way more exciting than watching the exhibition match between Bayern and the MLS All Stars. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the Homegrown team is taking on the Timbers U23s.
That's correct.
Yeah, so
yes.
It's hard to say. I mean, I guess that's maybe where, I got a lot of weakness in covering MLS. I don't really focus too much on the homegrown players, not because they're not good players, but I think it just has more to do with they really just don't influence the outcome of a team yet. So, I think you're right. You're probably going to see individual skills take place in the U23 matchup. I would have thought from a team perspective, given the amount of playing time that the Timbers U23s have had, they could probably end up winning. The singular capability of some of the younger players, it's hard for me to measure. I don't know. Jay?
No, it's completely understandable. Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
The only disappointment for me is not the Timbers as a U23 team is actually a fairly successful team. They made the quarterfinals of the USL PDL season. I would have liked to see maybe even the US U20 team, or possibly even maybe Mexico's U20 team. I think having the Portland 23 team against the homegrowns, who are all professionals at this point, should have. It kind of takes away the luster of it. But I'm excited to see these young guys. I think there's a lot more interest since the World Cup about development of players and about how these players are growing and how these players are being used in the league. And if you look at the roster for the homegrowns, you could put a decent starting roster together with the current players. I mean Yella's not going to play, but Will Trapp's playing, who's had a rough couple of games, but he's playing. Harry Schiff's playing, who's having a really good season. I mean, truly tremendous season. He might actually be considered a snub. Zardith is coming on the last couple of games, and he's figuring it out in LA. And then someone like Tommy Thompson, who we're not seeing currently for San Jose because they just don't play the way he plays. I can't wait to see him on the field.
I think Chris has a different opinion about your LA Galaxy boy.
About Zardith?
Did you see my tweet the other day?
Well, I remember reading your tweet watching the Galaxy Sounder game, and you're like, he just gets a bump because he's playing with Keane and Donovan.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, he's 23. Sometimes he needs that. Sometimes you need to be around smarter players to get it. Yeah. I don't think he's going to be phenomenal, but go ahead.
Well, I'm not saying I disagree with you, Jay, but I come at it from a different view. I mean, when I learned the game of football, I learned it in Europe and in England in particular, and 23 for me, I still have a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that they're young in the league at the age of 23 when they're, most players that break in at a young age in the EPL, that's 18 or 19 years old. And, there's the odd one like Rooney who even gets on the pitch at the age of 17. But, for me, not to take away from the U23 match that's going to take place at Providence Park, I'm actually going to be at Tualatin Park, which is probably about 3 miles away from where I live, this weekend, and I think it's actually Sunday and then Monday. The U16s, the East, West, and I think the South All-Stars, the U16s for the U.S., plus Bayern Munich's U16 team, they're going to be going head-to-head in a round-robin tournament. I'm going to be watching that. I'm going to be sitting on the sidelines watching that because those lads, they're only 2 years removed from the kids that I used to coach. So it'll be interesting for me to see how much they've developed versus what I was used to seeing just in a club atmosphere. So I don't know that they've made too much of a deal about that, but I would have thought there's going to be quite a few people watching those U16s play.
It's interesting you say that. And I speak this, I'm starting to cover college soccer next season. I'm covering NPSL and the PDL. And there is a weird disconnect. I know as being a soccer fan, I know as being a fan of European teams, that 16s are really strong developmental time, 16, 18. But there is a part of here that when in the United States, when we hear a 16-year-old kid being an athlete, we think about the AAU basketball, high school basketball, and we think about the seediness of AAU high school basketball. And I think we kind of have to, as a society, as a country, as sports fans, we kind of have to break that mold when it comes to soccer because this is not the AAU system of basketball where there's a lot of agents and street agents trying to get money out of these young kids, but they're actually teams, like professional teams who have an interest in these kids, developing them. A lot of professional teams do take these kids in for free. And for me personally, I have a hard time looking at kids who are under 18 as prospects. It's a big step up for us if we as a country can look at, as a soccer nation, look at kids as 16-year-old athletes and prospects for the future, like you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, the academy for all the MLS teams is U18 and U16, and there's two kids from Portland's academy that'll be playing this weekend. And I'm sure, there's kids from all the other academies that are going to be playing as well. The professional clubs have the rights to those players. So in as much as they go to college, I don't think much of the NCAA as an organization as a whole, especially when you look at college football. But, these kids have already made a professional commitment to being part of an organization before they've even finished high school. So, and I think that's a good thing. And I think it actually helps publicize and get this league stronger. The sooner that we don't rely on having to spend significant dollars for DP players to come from overseas, and the more that they're homegrown, the better off the league will be, and the more competitive I think they'll be in the U.S. men's national team too.
No, absolutely. It's the foundation that we're going to move forward on. Absolutely. Chris, backpedaling a little bit because I had said we were going to talk about this. what do you think the impact of the All Star Game is going to be on Portland, the city, the club, and maybe if you want to get into it, maybe ownership?
As far as the city goes, I lived in Seattle, or just south of Seattle, for 4 years upon returning to the States. And, I didn't pay a lot of attention to MLS soccer back then. That was like late 2001 to 2005. And then I moved here to Portland, and I watched the game on television, TV. That's my English phrase, telly. And I think that was probably in 2007 or 2008. And having learned the game and gone to see football games in England, I was just taken aback by the significant atmosphere that you get. Even in a league game, I'm sitting where I'm sitting, as you know, I get spine-tingling chills through my back when I hear the end of the national anthem and the roar from the Timbers Army and the whole 20,000 in the stadium. So in as much as it might be a big deal for other cities, I think this city probably is taking it in stride that it's a special event, and they're going to soak it up and live it up. But, there's nothing that beats sitting in the stadium when it's the Timbers playing. And, I've followed some of the Timbers Army chats here the last couple of days or two, and my takeaway, and I think some of their takeaways as well, is it's a shame that, we're going to have this big All-Star game here where the stadium's going to be sold out, 20,630 or whatever the number is. And, it's not going to be the Timbers Army sitting in the TA section. It's going to be everybody and their brother and sister sitting across the entire stadium. So the atmosphere will be superb, but it won't match, and I won't say it won't match bad or good, but it just won't match what you get when you sit at Providence Park.
Well, it's because the All-Star Game is a spectacle versus it being a football match, kind of. I mean, to a certain extent. Leading up to the fact that your supporter section is going to be
yeah, and it is.
diffused.
I mean, they just sold, as far as I know, it's everything was GA, apart from probably the loge seats or whatever they're called nowadays. But, the city's taking it in stride. They got a place called Pioneer Square. They put up a temporary pitch that's made out of AstroTurf, and I think it's probably 40 or 50 yards by 40 or 50 yards. And, there's going to be a lot of events going on in downtown and at the waterfront park. And then FC Bayern are going to be training out at the University of Portland. And even, the University of Portland hosted the World Conference on Science and Soccer this year. So, soccer's huge in this part of the country. And if you guys can ever make it out here, I think, you'd enjoy every second of sitting in the stadium and watching a game. So
it's on the bucket list.
Yeah, I would have made it last year. I'm a Norwich fan, and I would have made it out last year. It's just I didn't realize until
well,
I already made
if you're a
vacation
Norwich
plans.
fan, then you should pronounce it Norwich.
Yeah, I know. I do it when I'm watching a game. But I'm in polite company. I pronounce it Norwich because that's how we pronounce it in the Northeast. We have, as a former Yankee fan, we used to have an old minor league team called the Norwich Navigators.
Well,
but yeah, I know it's Norwich.
And I say that because I got my youth FA license through Norwich City. So I actually lived about 30 miles south of Norwich when I lived in England. In speaking to the club, Caleb, I think, had a couple of interviews in about the All-Star Game, and he takes it in stride. And for him, I think he said he's looking forward to it, especially coaching, having the opportunity to coach and run a game when you got so many talented players on the pitch. He did the U23s. There was a run of bad luck there, not making it into the Olympics, but he's looking forward to it. I'm sure Sean McCauley is, and the other guys that work with Caleb. As a matter of fact, next Monday, I'll be out at the Timbers training facility watching the MLS All Stars train. So that'll be kind of cool. I don't know if they're just going to do a B-roll or if they're going to allow us to do interviews or anything like that. But, I'll probably have a chat with Caleb and ask him how it's going. I probably won't chat to too many of the players. The All-Star credentials, there's probably going to be 150 members of the media here. So, it'll be pretty packed out there. And then Sunday I'll be over at UP, University of Portland, watching FC Bayern train. So that'll be kind of fun too. So, with respect to the club, it's a big deal. It's good fun, and it's a nice break for the guys. As far as the ownership, Merritt Paulson, he's known for getting into Twitter battles on occasion with, Joe Blogs, just your average fan.
He doesn't mind getting his hands dirty with the simple folk,
the hoi
the common
polloi,
folk.
as Lois Lerner would say, from the IRS. But I couldn't help that dig. But Merritt's a nice guy. I see him and I say hi, and he says hi, and I've bowled with him once in a charity bowling tournament. So it's a big deal for Merritt. I mean, when he first found out that the Timbers were going to host it, he was playing I've Got a Secret for a long time about FC Bayern coming to town. And, I don't blame him. I mean, it's a huge thing to see the success of the Portland Timbers. And, I'm not too sure if I agree with what Gavin Wilkinson said maybe about 3 or 4 months ago when they were talking about bringing in DPs. But I recall Gavin Wilkinson, I think, saying, Portland doesn't need to go out and buy a $7 million, dollar striker. Our stadium sells out, and it's going to sell out most likely regardless if we bring in a $1 million DP, a $2 million DP, or $7 million DP. Our fans appreciate us bringing in good, solid players. And, when you look at the Timbers, there's good, solid players, and there's no Thierry Henry on the team, but, if you look at Diego Valeri and what he brings to the pitch, that's pretty powerful. And then you look at the leadership, and some might disagree, but you look at the leadership of Will Johnson on the pitch, and then Liam Ridgewell just being brought in. They don't really need the all-stars here like you've got Clint Dempsey or Landon Donovan. So that was a big deal, I think, for Merritt Paulson to kind of get the all-stars here.
What an advantage that is that you don't have to spend a DP slot on a marquee type name for the sake of a marquee. Meaning you could spend a DP slot specifically on the team need, on the actual football purpose, versus, well, this guy is going to sell jerseys or put butts in the seats. It eliminates what I would say 3/4, maybe more of the league.
Yeah,
think about.
Here's a good example. Diego Chira was a DP when he signed. He's not a DP anymore. He's a regular player, and he's a regular player because he wants to play here. So he throws out his DP status by getting the appropriate paperwork signed to play in the country. I think you're probably going to see more players do that as time passes, especially those from South America or Central America. I saw something in the news the other day about Brazil. What was it? There's a young, was it the guy that plays for New York? No, it's the guy that plays for Kansas City. Was talking about Brazil needs to kind of do a rethink on playing in MLS because of the advantages of playing here and how organized the system is. And if you look at Merritt Paulson and Gavin Wilkinson and Caleb Porter, speaking specifically about Caleb Porter, he's very organized. And, I would have thought that Merritt Paulson's probably pretty organized too, although, some might disagree based upon personal opinion. So part of that organization feeds into the players wanting to play here, and if they want to play here, losing that DP status then allows other better players to come in as well, like Diego Valeri and then Liam Ridgewell. So
I agree. Sometimes the sum of all the parts are greater than the individual pieces.
As a Red Bull watcher and season ticket holder, I kind of have to agree with that.
But
at least for the most part. But I will have to disagree with the Henry part. He is
Henry's a special man.
He is phenomenal to watch live.
He is. And just to go back to the team as a whole is better than the sum of the individual parts. That's however you said that, Dan. That's why I developed.
However, I butchered that.
That's exactly why I decided to take on that analysis that looks at team performance, not individual performance. Everybody and their brother knows Thierry Henry is probably one of the best players that the MLS has ever seen. The guy's just phenomenal. He's got vision. He's got pace. And I saw him play for Arsenal. So when he was young, him and Dennis Bergkamp and the rest of those guys, they were pretty awesome.
Now you're talking my music. Those are my legends. All right, let's move into silly season, the transfer window. Right now, there's been a couple of transfers. There's been a couple of hot rumors. I think LA's got something cooking. Jay, what's the rumor right now with LA?
I think it was Sasa Kleskin coming to LA. Not going to be a DP. They're using allocation money to push down his contract because he's coming in half the season. He's not going to hit that DP threshold about $300,000.
It's like $385, I think.
Yeah, and they moved up in the allocation order, I think, to third. So they had to figure out a way to sneak into either top or hoping that two teams in front of them don't want him.
No, wait. Let me ask you a question. Okay. All right. So there's this. They have to move up in the allocation process. Can't Major League Soccer just change the rules?
That's what they always do. So.
Can't they just say, well, you could go to every third team?
I think we're talking about off mic. I think we're talking about this off mic where we were saying that there's a secret DP list where there's 3 players on everyone's list, and if you happen to fall on their list, you can get them.
Get first dibs, regardless.
You got first dibs regardless. Maybe that situation, I don't know. Such a question would be a.
Where's he play, Jay? Is he a midfielder?
He's a midfielder. He plays on the left-hand side primarily.
Where's Donovan going to play?
Well, Donovan can play. They've been playing a diamond all season. Ishiyaki's kind of playing either on the top of the diamond, on the left, or on the right. So he's very versatile. He can move around. So either be Juninho. Juninho has been coming off the bench the last game or 2 games ago.
No, I think wasn't he on. I thought he was on the. I thought he started against the Sounders. I could be wrong.
He started against the Sounders. He started against the Sounders. He did. So they do have guys that can play all around, but that's kind of a scary team.
But I thought the league didn't want LA to be the best. I'm sorry. I'm just I get whenever we start talking about the league. I just get
if they sign this guy, Klischstein, if they sign him, that kind of puts Robbie Rogers as a fullback for the rest of his time in LA. I would have thought. They got some pretty talented midfielders already. So, think about the impact to other players. I mean, if you bring him on, you play him on the left, and you've got Ishizaki playing at the top. Geez, I don't know who maybe you'd have on the right. You might have Donovan on the right, but wonder whether or not you might see Zardes get kicked into touch too, because you got Juninho as well as Sarvas. So, if I'm Arena, if you bring in this guy whose last name I can't pronounce, I kick Zardes into touch and I play him the last 15 minutes of the game when the center backs are tired. Yeah, and you go with experience across the entire 6 atop the back 4.
Talk on your other. I think Robbie Rogers finally found this spot as a left fullback on that team. Yeah, the kind of like we were saying, it is a lot of puzzle pieces that he has to move around, but he has a lot of really talented players. I think Gorgon from on the right hand side.
Dan Gorgon?
Yes, I think he's probably had the best of all the fullbacks. I think he's probably had the
Gorgon
the
and Beltran. You mentioned Beltran earlier. Going back to the All Star roster. Those 2 guys kind of stand out to me as being solid. I don't know if you followed Rogers' tail though. He actually didn't find the fullback position. He was basically probably told, you need to learn to play fullback because we don't got space for you anywhere else. We got interest. And really, I mean, he played for their U23, not the U23, the reserves for I think two or three games when he was coming back from his injury. So, I think he was basically given direction. You need to learn how to play fullback.
There's another prominent U.S. men's national team, which seems to be the trend. Major League Soccer is trying to cash in on the World Cup, I think, or at the minimum, they've been paying a little bit of a premium, I think, for U.S. men's national team players. But the German-American Jermaine Jones has been linked with, most recently I heard, the Fire. Jay, what do you think? Is that a good fit for Jermaine Jones and the league itself? Because I know he wants big bucks.
The rumor was he wants to be in L.A. I mean, the last game Chicago Fire played Lewinowicz, who's their captain and who's been their defensive midfielder. They played him as center back. They actually had a 0-0 draw last game. against Vancouver. I'm not sure if they were home or away in that game. I think they were home in that game. Yeah, they were home in that game. So if they're willing to play Lewandowicz as a center back,
maybe they're moving. Maybe they're practicing. Let's have a test run to see if it can happen.
Maybe. I mean, Chicago's a big city. They're not getting enough fan support that they expected to have. They got it kind of soaked out of as much goodwill with that Mike McGee trade last year as the hometown boy coming back. Maybe they're making a run. Maybe if this ownership is serious about making these fan bases who are very unhappy. Remember last year they had the walkout. The supporters section had the walkout last year. If they're considering making them happy, they might have to make some kind of move.
I think they are. I actually just did an article about 5 or 6 days ago about the Chicago Fire. Yeah, they're going to try to land Jermaine Jones. The issue is I think you nailed it. Is Laurentowicz, does he play center back? And I think he probably is going to shift back there. One of the things that I was worried about when I did the article was, they call themselves playing a 4-4-2, but, Laurentowicz plays a central defensive midfielder, and I don't think that the system, if you will, and the players really ran to a bucket or double pivot. Alex was the other guy that worked with Laurentowicz in the central midfield area. So, if Jones comes on that side, I don't know, maybe save his legs and you play him as a center back, or Laurentowicz drops back and Alex and Jones pair up. But Yallop is, I don't know, boy. Then you've also got Razvan Kosis, who just also got signed as a potential midfield partner for Laurentowicz. So that's probably 4 or 5 central defending midfielders that the Chicago Fire could have on their roster. So they're top in the allocation order, and I don't know if they are or not. Do you know, Jay? Okay, because
I don't know. Go ahead, Jay. I'm sorry, I cut off Jay. No, I shook my head, but I said I was actually saying I don't know.
But the thing is maybe when they look at the makeup of their team, I don't honestly think that central defending midfield is their only issue. I think they've got issues at fullback as well as center back. So I don't know if it's just something to make the fans happy, but based upon the feedback that I got from the article that I wrote, the fans aren't happy with a lot of the Chicago Fire play.
They do have center back issues. They've had it all season. I mean, their center backs have been, the games I watched, They have been really, it's kind of like you put the best guy back. I think the Laurentowicz thing was kind of like you put the best guy back there you can.
Yeah.
And hope that he can play the position. I think Lob is out of answers, like you were saying. But go on about your piece. I know I did see some positive tweets about your piece, especially from bloggers from.
I was actually a bit surprised. I had more response in writing a one-off article for the Chicago Fire than I'd normally get when I write for the Portland Timbers. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't get a lot of response from the Portland Timbers fans. Not because they're not reading it, but I think they're just kind of like, okay, cool, that's all right. Sometimes having no comments is a better thing than having a lot of comments. But there was good feedback there. I mean, Kosis was brought up as well as Alex. I don't know if Jermaine Jones is the answer, and if Columbus said that they've got some sort of feeler for a big, national team player, maybe something else is going behind the scenes. If Chicago's got the number one allocation or the first slot for players coming back, maybe they're working on something else.
It's hard for me to keep track of the rules, but I thought, I would think that Jermaine Jones would be in the I don't need to be in the allocation list type player.
He's a loan. He's loan.
He would be a loan into the MLS?
Well, no, he's currently on loan now
in Turkey
with a Turkish team.
Yes,
the season hasn't started, so that's not obviously not the situation right now. It's a weird situation because the team he's currently on would have to break the contract with the Turkish team to get him here on a loan or just sell him outright. The MLS would have to pay a lot of money for that in order to break the contract.
I'm not sure. I mean, Jermaine Jones did a yeoman's job in the U.S. men's national team, but in 4 years' time, if he's the same age that he is now, I don't see him making that team. Only because there's going to be guys that are going to be quicker, faster, stronger, and have better passing accuracy. Yeah,
let's hope. Let's hope.
The average passing
Yeah.
accuracy for the Americans in the World Cup was about 77%. And that's kind of on par with MLS. I would have thought if Yallop is going to want to do something, he needs to increase how they move the ball better. And, okay, Jones can give you the physical presence, I think, in the center. I don't think anybody would probably disagree with that given his size. But, does that physical presence translate to vision? I think most agree that Bradley was the player that had vision on the men's national team. So, boy, it's hard to say with Jermaine Jones. I mean, wow.
Maybe the Fire need Kyle Beckerman. Because, if we're going to talk about vision and being a great holding player, Jermaine, I feel like they're cashing in on a very small sample size of what Jermaine Jones has done. I'm not sold.
I have
that
to
he's
agree.
worth
In a great
bucks.
example, I hate bringing back the Portland Timbers again, but 3 years ago, I think it was, they signed Chris Boyd. They made a big splash. We're bringing in this Scott striker, and he's a poacher, and he's the next best thing to sliced bread and all that kind of stuff. And he flopped in the league, but it was a big press. It was a big media kind of thing, and he works with John Spencer and all that kind of jazz. And we're going to bring this style of football to Portland, and it didn't pan out at all. And, there's just, you look at a guy like Ship, and, okay, the advantage of bringing in Jermaine Jones is, a young kid like Ship could learn tons from playing with a guy like Jermaine Jones. So, there is the flip side that, the leadership aspect of it comes with Jermaine Jones, and, his pedigree is being a national team player. So, chemistry is a funny thing in soccer. It can win you games, and you can't measure it. So, maybe it's not such a bad thing that they bring him in, and Yallop takes the rest of the year to mold his team for next year, kind of like Klopas is going to be doing with Montreal.
Jay, last word on Jermaine Jones.
I think I kind of was going with Dan. I think it's kind of both ways. I don't think I think it's a chemistry thing with Jermaine Jones. I think that he has to almost play next to somebody else because he is a little bit wild out there, just from what everyone saw in the World Cup. And I think it's absolutely 100%. Chicago is desperate for some kind of spark, some kind of fan promotion, something to wake this fan base up, or even wake the casual fans up, because I just don't think that they're getting the kind of attendance, kind of response, kind of popularity within their own market. That's really selling them or really getting people out to the stadium.
Agreed.
Each episode of Homegrown is going to feature a bit of history from domestic soccer. This week, Jay is going to give us a peek at what he's calling the Quarry.
At the start of 2002 season, the perception of Major League Soccer within the mainstream sports landscape could not have been worse. Both Florida franchises, the Tampa Bay Mutiny, a charter MLS member, and the Roy Hudson-coached Miami Fusion folded. The league was down to 10 teams, 5 of which was under one investment group, AEG. The stars of the 1994 World Cup, which the league built early success on, were aging out. Carlos Valderrama was 40 years old, Preki, 39, John Hartz, 35, and Alexia Lalas, at the age of 32, was 1 year away from retirement. However, the league had two things going for it. For the first time in league history, year-to-year attendance figures actually increased. And most importantly, investors made a commitment to fund the league until the 2006 season. Major League Soccer was given a lifeline, and the executives realized the current course would not get them past 2006. Don Garber and the league's front office decided a strategical shift that would embrace soccer from outside the domestic vacuum their predecessors created. One of the first symbolic acts was to change the format of the MLS All Star Game. Rather than play East versus West, the MLS All Stars would face a guest. The announcement in early April of 2002 allowed executives 4 months to schedule an opponent for the league's biggest exhibition match. In the meantime, Players and essentially the entire footballing world had their eyes on South Korea and Japan for the World Cup that began in June. The first World Cup during the MLS era was a complete disaster for the U.S. men's national team. The U.S. team, made up of 16 MLS players, finished dead last in France '98, losing all 3 group games and scoring only a single goal. The 2002 World Cup saw 11 MLS players on the roster, including youngsters that came through the ranks of the U.S. professional leagues, such as DeMarcus Beasley, Landon Donovan, Clint Mathis, Josh Wolf, and Pablo Mastroeni. The coach of the Yanks was former DC United coach and the winner of the first 2 MLS Cups, Bruce Arena. The league distanced themselves from the failures of France '98. This World Cup, however, the league gleefully embraced the players as the U.S. advanced out of the group stages and defeated rival Mexico in the round of 16. By the time the players returned, the league were pushing promotional events with bobblehead doll giveaways and mohawk haircuts inspired by Clint Mathis. In addition, the MLS announced the returning stars of the U.S. men's national team will be the guest opponents for the MLS All Star Game at RFK Stadium. The only caveat is the team would not include players from the European clubs. Instead, the remaining 7 players needed to fill the roster was made up of current MLS players from past World Cups. In front of 31,000 fans at RFK, the U.S. men's national B team faced the MLS All Stars that include first-time All-Stars Carlos Ruiz, Taylor Twellman, and Carlos Bocanegra, future MLS coaches Mike Pecky and Jason Kreis, former MVPs Marco Echeverry and Carlos Valderrama, and future men's national team star Tim Howard. The only thing that would dampen this star-studded event was rain. Lots and lots of rain. Desperate for broadcast television airtime, MLS executives went through with the game despite the weather. The game started despite heavy rain and winds. 20 minutes into the match, the game had to be called off due to lightning, forcing a nearly hour-long stoppage. Due to time constraints, the first half was reduced from 45 minutes to 30 minutes. This guaranteed that Mexican pop star Paulina Rubio would have her halftime performance aired on live American broadcast television, before the 6 o'clock ABC window would close. For those in the stands, a shortened first half was likely welcome, as a waterlogged pitch resulted in 0 goals in the first half. Fortunately, when the water receded, play improved. The second half saw 5 goals in 24 minutes, scored by Landon Donovan, Jason Kreis, Marcos Echeverry, Kobe Jones, and Steven Ralston, who scored the game winner for the MLS All Stars. The 2002 season marked a turnaround for the league, riddled with arrogant ideas, poor execution, and a weak product in general. That summer, we recognized for the start of 2 decade-long legacies: a guest opponent for the All Star Game and the World Cup bump.
And to end the show tonight, we would like to have our guest, and I think this is gonna be a tradition of the show. We're gonna have our guest name the last segment, hopefully with a football term, but it could be anything. So, Chris, what do you got for us tonight? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
We'll call it Back to Square One. And the history, I mean, that's a common phrase probably for a lot of people, but the history behind that is, in the old days, they used to mark the pitch out in 9 squares, I think it is, and square one was the goalkeeper square. So when all else fails, push the ball back to the goalkeeper. So that's where the phrase "back to square one" comes from.
Perfect. It's actually perfect for this segment. So
I might steal it, actually. I might steal the rest.
Maybe
of the
the tradition just got thrown out the window, and now we're gonna go. And this week or tonight on Back to Square One. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna have some quick shot questions here. I'm gonna go Jay first. Here we go. At this point in the season, is there one team from each conference that you could say definitely 100% not making the playoffs?
I think I'm confident with saying at least Houston. I want to say Houston. God, I want to say Houston all season, but no. I'm going to say so. Montreal's definitely out. They got 14, and right now the 5th place team, Columbus Crew, has 26. And I want to say I'm going to say San Jose.
San Jose's out.
They made improvements, but I think San Jose's out of it with 20.
Wow.
Chris,
okay. Well,
West Coast first.
My bottom feeder is Chivas USA. I just don't see them going anywhere. I'll respond later to a comment on on San Jose. But as far as the Eastern Conference, geez, there's probably 2 or 3 teams that could be the bottom feeder. But I'll stick with Montreal.
Okay, I'll throw in my 2 cents. I agree. It looks like it's going to be unanimous. Montreal, I think, although the East is crazy, I think Montreal is going to stay at the bottom. I honestly believe that the table in the West lies. I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't believe that it'll be San Jose. I don't believe it'll be Chivas. But it doesn't mean that it won't be them. I just don't believe right now that it'll be them. I can't pick the West. I can't. All right. On to question number 2. Question number 2. It's like a quiz show. Question number 2. This time, Chris, who's going to win the U.S. Open?
Gosh. Who's in it?
It's, right now we have four. We have 4 teams. It's the Union is visiting Dallas, and Fire is visiting the Sounders.
Wow. Okay.
Anybody but Seattle?
It depends on where the game's played. I could see FC Dallas beating Seattle. They're pretty strong in attack, so especially when they've got Diaz back. So, I could see Dallas beating Seattle. Boy, the Union and Chicago get in. That's like DC United winning it last year. That'd be a shame. Hate to say it.
That's kind of how I feel. But I also completely agree with you. If Diaz is back on Dallas is a scary team. Diaz works that engine really well. But I'm gonna take Seattle though. I think the depth is too good.
I'm gonna go the thing that's gonna boost Chicago this year is they're gonna win the U.S. Open Cup. That's what I think. Especially watching how awful Seattle was the other night.
It worked
nice
last
pick.
season. It worked last season, so let's go.
Whatever. I got to be a little different. You guys are too the same. All right. Last question. Here we go. And this is I don't know who you're going to say, but I hope that it's who I think it's going to be. Who is going to be leading the goal scoring race September 1st? Jay.
I know who I want to say, but I know who I'm going to say. I want to say Torres because I just love watching him play. But they're just gonna people will be able to shut him down, and they're starting to shut him down now. It's gonna be Bradley Wright Phillips. He's the guy you miss every time. You don't see him. He sneaks in. He's smart enough to get those goals. So I'm going with Bradley Wright Phillips.
Oh wow,
Chris?
Boy, you paint me in a corner because I don't pay a lot of attention to who the top goal scorers are. I would have, Phillips is up there, and we're supposed to answer this question in 10 seconds, and I don't want to, and I can't. So, I'll go with, okay, Jay, who are the top 5 goal scorers?
Bradley Wright Phillips at 17, Dom Dwyer at 14, Eric Torres at 14, Jermaine Defoe at 11.
All right, I'll go
Keane
with
at 10.
Phillips because out of all those teams, I think New York is a very good attacking team. They're crap in defense, but they're a very good attacking team. So I'll go with Phillips. But boy, I hate doing that.
Well, I'm gonna go. We're gonna make this one another unanimous one. BWP. He's got it. I think so. I think he's for all the reasons that Jay said, and even other reasons that Chris said.
How about a sleeper? You got a sleeper, Jay?
Sleeper to sneak into the race, or sleeper to kind of have to get
Team
himself
sleeper.
on fire towards the end of the season. At the end of the season, there's a lot of teams making a lot of moves. I can see Portland getting in, but I really like the Whitecaps. I don't know if Robinson's a good enough coach to get that team together, but I love that young talent.
Yeah, I can see that. How about you, Dan?
It's not really. I don't think it's so much of a sleeper pick, but they've been slumping. I think Toronto's gonna have a second half of the season that's gonna impress.
I just can't stand. I can't stand Ryan Nelson as a
No,
coach.
I'm not a particular Toronto fan, but I feel like their second half of the season. I think they're gonna inch their way towards the top of that East, especially with the East.
Yeah.
The East is for the taking. So,
Agreed.
Well, for me, since I asked the question, probably the no-brainer from where I sit in this, on the left coast of America, I would have thought Portland's a sleeper, but I don't think they're a sleeper because I think people recognize that they're a really, really strong team. I asked this question because what you said earlier, Jay, about San Jose, and here's the thing: San Jose is probably one of the best defending teams in MLS, and I don't think they're done. I think they got 2 or 3 games in hand. You know, if Real Salt Lake doesn't pull, if they don't get their defecation consolidated, and Colorado goes on a swoon, I could see San Jose and Portland getting into the top 5 out in the West, especially with the new signing that they've had, that attacking midfielder. That's scary, but to me, I think they're a sleeper. They're strong in defense.
I wouldn't count them out either. And on that note, I think we've come to an impasse. I think we're good for tonight. I want to thank our guest tonight, Chris Gluck. Thank you for coming on tonight. I know I know we got you right at the end of the work week on a Friday on the West Coast, so appreciate you making the time for us, and I appreciate your commentary.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity to join you guys. Great conversations and great chats and ideas and all that kind of stuff. And out here on the left coast, Friday's a good time to be on a podcast. So thanks for the invite. Appreciate it, guys.
Where can they find
www.possessionwithpurpose.com. I do analysis on all the MLS, as well as focused on the Portland Timbers for the Columbian newspaper.
Excellent. I'd also like to thank Jay, our executive producer and mastermind behind Homegrown. Jay, where can the good folks out on the internet find you?
I'm doing most of my stuff at socceryanks.com, but I also open up my own little corner of the internet just to keep track of all my own stuff as I go out to different corners and different spaces. It's rescinderredblog.com.
Excellent. If you haven't figured it out, I am Dan from Soccer Yanks. You're probably listening to this because you listen to Soccer Yanks. If you haven't figured out it's me, I'm in trouble. But you can find me at Soccer Yanks, at Soccer Yank Dan, at Twitter. SoccerYanks.com to find all the latest about football from the American perspective.
No, it's football. Well done.
Soccer, whichever. I don't care. But we're Soccer Yanks, so there's a problem there, Chris. It's not a problem, really. But thank you, everyone, for listening, and please tune in again.